For more on this story, we welcome French journalist Delphine Minoui to the program. She is a former correspondent in Tehran for 10 years and the author of the memoir, I'm Writing You from Tehran. Thank you so much for joining us today on France 24. 3 months later, even after these brutal executions have begun, protesters do not appear to be deterred. What are you hearing from people you know in Iran?
Yes, what I hear from people I'm talking to on a daily basis is so far, despite the brutality, the protests have continued and people are determined to keep on going to the streets, to keep on raising their voice for democracy, for justice, for the respect of their dignity. There's no way they are going to turn back to their house despite the violence. All they want, and they share the same slogan, is the fall of the regime.
Now, even among people who are not out there protesting, there is a lot of discontent. It's not just the people that are out on the streets. And that discontent is not just going to disappear. So what is the government going to have to do to address it?
I think the government is today facing a huge dilemma because they realize that if they open up a little bit, if they try to give some concessions, it's just going to lead to the end of the regime. But on the other hand, so they are trying to use the tool of the violence, but even the violence doesn't seem to work. I mean, look at that. Like during the last 3 months, they've tried everything. They are shooting in the streets at protesters, including young protesters. At least 60 minors have been killed. They are putting demonstrators in jail. We hear about cases of rape inside jails. We hear about cases of security forces arresting injured protesters in the hospitals and even sometimes arresting doctors. We have had so far 2 cases of execution. But as you see, I mean, even despite the whole violence, people are not gonna stop here. They are going to keep on going to the streets. It looks like, as opposed to the previous uprisings in Iran, the wall of fear has been broken. And so there's no way people are going to go back to their houses.
You mentioned that 60 children have been killed during this uprising. Can you explain a little more to our viewers what the role of young people has been over the past 3 months?
So many of the young people, I mean, most of the people who are demonstrating these days are young people and women. And one of the main places where the demonstrations are going on are the schools as well as the universities. And this is unprecedented. You have boys and girls together fighting for more freedom, calling for breaking the wall of segregation between the different sects. You have girls removing their scarves, cutting their hair, pulling out the portraits of Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, from their board. I mean, it's a fearless generation, and that's what makes the difference with, I would say, my generation. Iranians of my generations used to be ready to do any compromise. They would support the reforms. This young generation is a generation that is calling for its freedom to no limits. This is a generation which grew up, opened up to the world. They have access to internet. It's the YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter generation. They know exactly how the other young people are living abroad, and they want the same freedom. And that's why, I mean, they are telling us when we talk to them, when we ask them, aren't you scared? They say, I mean, it's not about being scared anymore. It's just about asking for our freedom. And what they are telling us is that they are ready to die for that.
Mm-hmm. As well as the expectations of youth in the country, what are some other ways that you see this uprising differing from others in the past?
What's striking is, I mean, I remember covering the 2009 uprising in Iran, which was against the fraudulent election of a ultra-conservative president. This was more like an uprising inside big cities. It didn't spread out in the whole country. Then you had other uprisings which were more related to economic issues. 2017, 2019, it happened mostly in small villages in the rural areas. And for the first time, it's the whole country that is waking. North, south, east, west, men, women together, young people, older people. And you even have, because let's not forget that it all started because of a woman who was killed because supposedly she was not wearing the hijab the way she should have been. But you see in the streets women who support the idea of wearing chador, of wearing the veil, but who are side by side with other women in the streets, because it's not a revolution for or against Islam. It's not a revolution for or against the veil. It's the revolution for claiming freedom and for being able to be respected the way people want to be.
Well, Delphine, finally, I want to ask you, what, if anything, can the international community do to try to pressure the regime or to try to prevent more executions?
What I hear from people I'm talking to in Iran is they always have the same expression. They say, be our voice. Don't forget us. Keep on putting the pressure. Try to put sanctions. Try to target the leaders of the repression. And so far, I mean, they see a little bit of light. Just the fact that lately Iran has been removed from the UN Commission on Women was a great sign for them. And they are realizing that the more you put pressure, the more you talk about them, the more the regime would be less inclined, let's say, to put a total blackout on what's going on inside the country.
Journalist Delphine Minoui, thank you so much for joining us here on France 24 and sharing your expertise.